What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're talking why The Last Man episode 6 titled Weird Al is Dead. And what's the temperature check on this show so far? Are you guys still liking it? Are you still enjoying it? I know a lot of people kind of chalked up the last episode as like woke garbage. I saw a lot of people in the comments saying that show has kind of gotten too woke for them. They're stepping away from it. If you thought last episode was bad with the wokeness, you're probably going to hate this episode. But like always, I'm going to do a quick recap of the show and I'll give you guys my thoughts on it after. Before we get into it, please make sure to like the video if you enjoy it. And please make sure to subscribe if you're new here. We keep up with all the new movies, TV shows, and all that stuff. But let's get into why The Last Man episode 6. So the episode starts out with this trio of motorcyclists who we don't yet know who they are at this point. But they're looking for Agent 335 and they have a photo of her. We then cut to York, who kind of stumbles upon this like candlelit ceremony. They're singing Radiohead's Karma Police. Someone tells York that they're doing this in tribute to the men that died. He kind of tells that person that York tells that person that Hero, his sister, once took him to a Radiohead concert, so he knows that there's more to music than Weird Al. The woman kind of replies back to him saying that rest in peace, Weird Al. I guess this is why the title of the episode is called Weird Al is Dead. Don't know why they named the episode after this one line, but let's just keep going. So then Agent 355 and Dr. Mann catch up with York at this candlelit ceremony. They kind of like participate for a little bit until 355 notices the trio walk in. So she finds them, a little suspects. So she pickpockets one of them and finds the photo of her. So now she realizes that these people are coming after her. They leave the ceremony and they take refuge in a church where York kind of like demands answers, like who are these people? What are they doing? 355 says that they must have been followed from Boston and that she needs to take them off the board. So again, this episode kind of reiterates that Agent 355 is not trying to resort to violence anymore. Like she's not trying to kill anyone. I think she says in this episode later on that she's not a killer. But we cut to Kimberly and Regina, who are at the White House, and they're talking about stuff at the Shrine of Men. I say stuff because they don't really talk about anything too important. Kimberly kind of just says Regina should be paraded like a feminist hero. Regina says feminism's only for liberals. And then Regina says that she's been a Republican. I don't know if that's supposed to be like a big reveal, that she voted for the Reagan administration. She's been a Republican ever since. Sort of like to get back at her mom because she was a Democrat. I don't know. It was just kind of like, just felt like nonsense. And then they kind of go in and talk about Jennifer. Regina says Jennifer has tragedy on her side. So, that's kind of like a popularity contest thing. Like she'll always have the people on her side because of that tragedy element. So she thinks like she's invincible. But then Kimberly says that she may not be as invincible as you think. We are then brought back to York, who wakes up in the middle of the night and he finds Agent 355 sleepwalking again. She's kind of like standing on the ledge of the upstairs of the church and she has a tear coming down her eye. And so he notices that she's sleepwalking, so he kind of just like coaxes her away from the ledge. We are then brought back to Hero and Sam and Nora and Mackenzie. We see that Roxanne, the head of this group, the blonde girl, she's kind of leading this support group. We also see a scene where Hero gives Sam some testosterone pills and Xanax and stuff. But Roxanne reveals herself that she used to be a police detective, so she kind of like routinely notices or encountered women who were beaten or killed by men. She's kind of telling all the rest of the women that. Nora kind of sees that this is maybe like too violent or too mature for Mackenzie, so she tries to take her away from this group. But Roxanne tells her no and kind of forces Nora to keep Mackenzie there. And then she kind of like, again, coaxes Mackenzie into like recounting what the men of her life used to say to her at parties. Like she kind of tells, this is a weird scene for me. Like, I don't know, maybe because I'm a guy, so I felt weird. Like I just didn't agree with it. But I'm going to go into this later on. But she kind of, like, Nora recounts how her uncle used to say, or her grandpa or whoever, say, like, oh, you've grown up so much ever since she like, entered a party, or that you're so pretty. Kind of, like, saying this narrative that, like, her uncle or grandpa saying that she's grown up is, like, them hitting on her or, like, being weird. I see, like, how this could be, like, again, chalked up as, like, this woke garbage feminist narrative. But I'm going to talk about this later, like my opinions on it, but let's just keep going with the recap. So Nora sort of objects to what Roxanne is saying that Mackenzie just lost her dad and her little 8-year-old brother. Before Roxanne can really respond to anything, an alarm sounds. And this is just a quick little scene where some survivors come to the mall that they're at, or like the shopping center that they're holding up in, and Roxanne kind of like refuses to take them in. And then one of the women says to Nora that she should be grateful that she's here because it's a lot worse on the outside. We then cut back to York and 355 quickly and Agent Mann. 355 sort of like preparing for battle in this church for when the trio show up. But Agent Mann is showing York the picture of 355 and kind of saying that this is showing that they're only after her and not him, so they should run away. But Yorick says that she doesn't want to leave, that he doesn't want to leave 355 by herself. So that's a quick little scene. Then we're brought back to Nora, who's trying to apologize to Roxanne about earlier. Roxanne kind of like takes her shirt off, and we notice that she's like missing a boob. It's probably due to breast cancer. Roxanne says that she recounts how Amazons used to cut off a breast to symbolize like strength, that they're doing that. And she also says that in her chat room, they used to call themselves the Amazons. So some more feminist talk from Roxanne. We can kind of see that she's like this starting to become, well, we'll see that this is sort of like a form of like extreme feminism. I don't know if that's the right term for like what this is, but it just sort of feels like extreme feminism. I don't know. That's how I interpreted it. But kind of like Roxanne scolds Nora for being so pathetic. Nora keeps saying like, I'm sorry. She's saying that all the men are dead. This is a different world. The world ended. It's okay to be yourself. You know, all this like being pity and saying sorry, like that no longer is needed because the men are gone. So then we're brought to maybe the weirdest scene of this whole episode. Hero's taking a bath around all these nude women. She obviously feels very uncomfortable. She's like covering her breasts and, you know, just doesn't want to talk to anyone. And they sort of like force her. They come around to her with, you know, everything hanging out, and they kind of force her to talk about herself, kind of like her own self-loathing. They kind of reveal their own fears to her, saying that Roxanne saved their lives and that they can save, that Roxanne can save Hero's life too. Hero kind of says her and Sam are going to leave soon anyway, but we can tell that she is intrigued by this idea of starting anew. We're then brought to Sam, who's being approached by Kelsey, who's very flirty with him and admits that she loves men. She whispers to him that there's a funeral tonight. We then see that there's a ceremony taking place with Laura at the center. She's like one of the girls there. And so Roxanne kind of like recounts Laura's former life. And then they just dump dirt on Laura's like naked body. And then she's baptized in this bathtub. And then she reveals herself and she's like all anew. And she says that her new name is Athena, who I think is the Greek goddess. She's like one of the main Greek goddesses. I don't know what she represents. But like Sam sort of sees all this as like nonsense and leaves. But Hero remains. She kind of looks like entranced, like she's now becoming intrigued by what's going on, and this will probably lead to her joining this group and becoming part of what Roxanne is trying to build. So then Kelsey catches up to Sam and kind of tells him to keep quiet about his doubts about the group. It's not safe for him. And then she also says that they're not even allowed to be alone with him. Probably Roxanne doesn't like the look of Sam and like what he represents, and so she kind of probably told everyone to stay away from him. But a woman sees them alone and kind of now retrieves Kelsey, which we'll see what happens to her later on. But then we're brought back to 355, who tells Yorick to go and hide downstairs. Yorick kind of like wants more answers and tries to talk to her about sleepwalking and how she looks so exhausted. This gets 355 angry, and she kind of says that she's protecting him from everyone, like stop asking all these questions. So Yorick gets mad from this response, and he goes to Dr. Mann and kind of says that he'll leave with her. We're then brought to a quick scene with Christine and Kimberly. If you remember, Christina is the one who was pregnant in the last episode. And they're talking again about that pregnancy. And Christine kind of says that she doesn't know if she wants to keep the baby or not yet, but she does know she wants to keep it a secret. And then Kimberly kind of like offers to like raise the baby, which is super weird, you know. And then that's kind of like just that scene. We then see Jennifer, who is Diane Lane's character. She's walking to the war room where she sees General Reed is kind of briefing Regina on what's going on with the church siege, of how they're going to infiltrate Agent 255 and how close they are. So they listen to the operation live. We see that Yorick and Mann have run off into the woods, leaving 355 alone. Jennifer hears that they've spotted the targets, and so she's sort of pressured by Regina's presence there. She wants to act accordingly, but she also knows that they have their eyes on Yorick, and she doesn't want to get Yorick killed. So she says, proceed with caution. 355 sort of catches up to like all the agents and Yorick and Mann. 355 sort of goes like Batman style, Batwoman style on them and takes them all out. With the help of Dr. Mann, she kind of like goes in there and saves 355's life pretty much. But one agent gets a good look at Yorick, but she lies about it to 355 so that 355 doesn't kill her, so she doesn't. But it is noticed that she does get a good look at Yorick and sort of surprised, like she knows that he's a man, and maybe even knows that that's the son of the Madam President, which she probably does. So 355 is mad at Yorick now for trying to flee. We then see Regina and Jennifer sort of arguing, and they're talking about how like xenophobes and bigots, and how Regina used to be that, or Jennifer was accusing Regina of being a bigot and stuff like that. Regina sort of wonders if Jennifer's been compromised by her closeness to Agent 355. and she sort of threatens to make public that 355 killed the American soldiers on the orders of Jennifer. Jennifer sort of dares her to do so, and that scene ends. And as the episode ends, we are brought back to Roxanne and Hiro, who are looking at the stars together. They kind of talk about the constellations and like the seven sisters things that's going on. So Roxanne kind of tells Hiro that everyone likes her and they want her to stay. Hiro says she's not a good person and pretty much confesses to killing Mike. Roxanne promises that if Hiro stays, she can be whoever she wants to be, sort of hinting that Hiro will probably go through the same sort of baptism thing, because as we saw, like, she was already intrigued by that idea. So either next episode, probably we'll see Hiro get baptized and probably take on this new persona maybe. And so then Nora sees Kimberly sort of getting confronted by three others for talking with Sam. And then the episode ends as these girls punch Kimberly and they kick her. And, you know, this is sort of like a message to Nora. And that's how the episode ends. So I'll give you guys my rating right now. I know that was a lot. But I'm giving it a 3.3 out of 5. Like it says, I do think this was the worst episode so far. Nothing really big happens. Like, I know this is a longer recap. I kind of want to get everything fit in here. But it's just nothing like too important. It just didn't feel like anything too important happened. But don't get me wrong, there was some interesting stuff that happened towards the end. You know, that's why it's like a 3.3 and not like a 1 or a 2 rating, right? But like, I want to talk about this real quick. If you thought the last episode was bad with the wokeness, stuff like that, like I said, with that one scene about gender variations or whatever, then you're gonna hate this episode. You know, like I already got comments from that last video saying that it was woke and stuff. Like this is you know, extreme feminism. But like I said, I want to talk about this more, right, earlier. So I think all that talk was supposed to make us feel weird, or we're supposed to be against it, like how Sam is against it, you know, like he's just like, you know, he feels weird about it and he thinks it's nonsense and leaves. That's what we're supposed to feel about it. I don't think it's the show's opinions like forcing it onto us by saying that through Roxanne's character. You know what I'm saying? We're not supposed to get on board with the ideas that Roxanne is sort of permitting. You know, like, yeah, she's a strong female character, but she's also a bad guy, and we can already tell, like, this is solidifying this episode that she's a bad guy. And so I don't think her opinions represent what this show is trying to say to us. You know, that's not the message of this show. If anything, they're just trying to show us what kind of character Roxanne is and, like, her opinions and why. And I think that comes across clearly through this episode. But I could see how there was a lot of, like, this extreme feminism talk. Could throw off a lot of people, like I said in the last episode. Some people don't want to come to and watch a show about this. And I don't really want my channel to, like, just be about all this talk. Not saying it's bad or anything. It's just not something, like, I enjoy, like, discussing. Like, I don't want to go back and forth in the comments about feminism and what's right and what's wrong and all that stuff. So, you know, I just want to get that out there. I don't think it's the show kind of, like, putting this feminism agenda onto us, you know? Because Roxanne isn't the star of the show. She's actually supposed to be a bad guy. We're not supposed to get on board with those ideas. And so I do think Hiro would join forces with Roxanne now, right? She'll probably get on board with this whole narrative. I feel like Sam might die now. It just seems like he's kind of going against the group, and that's not smart, as we can tell with Kimberly. But they sort of just beat up Kimberly, maybe because they know her well. I feel like if Sam kind of crosses that line, they'll just try to kill him. But yeah, I didn't care for the Jennifer and Regina stuff in this episode. It was just some more banter that we knew was coming anyway. She just threatens Jennifer. Regina, like, she doesn't really do anything crazy. And then the York and 355 stuff didn't interest me that much either. Were you guys interested in the church stuff? Like, it was alright, but it was just a lot of dialogue, like the sleepwalking stuff. It just wasn't that interesting with York and 355. I just want them to get to San Francisco at this point. But yeah, it just didn't seem like not too much happens, really. But let me know what you guys thought of this episode. Let me know if you guys enjoyed it or not. You know, maybe some of you guys actually liked this episode a lot. For me, this felt like the biggest dip in the episode. I haven't rated an episode lower than, I think, 3.8, 3.7 so far. So the fact this got a 3.3 is a huge dip. I hope this is the lowest we get in the show, because I have really been enjoying it a lot. And this episode just didn't do it for me. I just felt like nothing happened. So, but let me know what you thought in the comments, you know, about what happened, everything, if you got some theories going on. But like always, please make sure you like the video. Please make sure to subscribe if you're new. And I will see you guys in the next video.